Yes, my shit right here. So I just my shit right here. Welcome back to another episode of Road to William. We're gonna get right into it. Hope y'all feeling good today. Let me know in the comments. How was your holidays? Are you looking forward to Christmas? Are you looking forward to the new year? What's going on? Today, y'all, I just wanted to do shout out to Afro Marxist. You already know how it is. You already know. You already know. If you've been here, because in the blurb. So Michelle Alexander is what are we fighting for? I haven't watched this complete video, but the snippet of it that I did watch, I thought it would be a good discussion to open up. But this was about 6 years ago. It like Trump gets elected. It's a whole thing. So I just feel like this is a good video for us to kind of reflect on how did people react when he became president back then? What was his agenda back then versus now? But this is just a snippet of what we're going to be diving into.
I think I would say that over the last year, since Trump has been elected, uh, so many of us, even outside of Charlottesville, where there haven't been Nazis and white nationalists marching, uh, in our backyard, we have been overwhelmed and traumatized and exhausted. By the daily onslaught. Waking up to Trump's Twitter feed every morning is enough to exhaust any one of us. Not.
I don't follow him, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, that's wise.
Can't escape.
But what's interesting is I think many progressive forces were restrained during the Obama administration because, and I can certainly say in communities of color, there was a reluctance to challenge the first Black president or create any trouble for him at all because he was catching such hell as it was already. And with the exception of the Black Lives Matter movement, there was not the kind of bold and courageous advocacy that our times really called for over those 8 years, coming off of an economic crisis and escalating rates of deportation. I mean, mass deportation didn't begin with the Trump administration. It escalated drastically during the Obama administration. And I think many of us look back at that period of time when our news feeds were filled with, the stories of Trayvon Martin and, Eric Brown and on, all of the people who were shot and killed by police. And many of us might have wished bolder, more courageous responses from the president. And we might have demanded more bold and courageous response if he had not been the first Black president. And now, as we're entering into this Trump administration, so many of us are reacting to the crises of the day, that we don't carve out time, my experience in many circles, for imagining what it is we really want. What are we really fighting for? Not just what we're against or what we're afraid to say because we don't want to harm the first Black president, but what do we really want? And as I was mentioning to a few students before this gathering began, my views have really changed over the years. I began as a liberal civil rights lawyer who felt like, look, if we just file another lawsuit or get a meeting with the lieutenant governor or that
anytime
we can fix this thing. But I have to say, in all candor now, after many, many years trying to tinker with the machine, that I don't believe we will get justice for poor people and people of color through our two-party pay-to-play political system. Great individual folks who might be in that system, maybe. And I also don't think our current economic system is one that will deliver justice for poor people and people of color. And if that's true, if those things are true, then I hope we will carve out some time, even as we resist and even as we react, that we will carve out some time to think boldly and courageously about the new America that we want to birth together. What kind of political system do we actually want? What kind of economic system do we actually want? Are we willing not just to fight against the repeal of Obamacare, but to fight for a healthcare system that provides universal, not just fight against Sessions' attempt to rev up the drug war yet again, but to fight for the decriminalization of drug use and drug addiction and the incarceration. What would a political system look like that was not ruled by cash, that wasn't held hostage to private interests? What would that look like? What do we want to fight for? And this is a time, even in the midst of feeling under siege by this administration, and even as white nationalists feel empowered in this moment, this is the time for us to use our radical imagination and begin to organize and work for the country we actually want to co-create.
Great conversations, great points. Let me know if you've heard of Michelle Alexander. It's my first time. I tell y'all this all the time if I'm talking to introducing y'all someone I've never met before. I'm not afraid to say that I don't know. It's the whole shit. It's the whole shit. We're on a journey together. We're on a journey together. But let me know if you've heard of Michelle Alexander.
That is a question though. Is it actually possible to have a perhaps egalitarian society where all of these things are possible, where human needs are met and realized, where the destruction of the planet isn't connected to the way that our lives are organized, where racism and sexism and transphobia and all of these oppressions that exist in this society, are these things, the absence of these things, actually compatible in a free market capitalist system? We're among friends.
No, I think it's a critically important question, because there is a temptation, and I'm going to speak now just particularly about kind of the narrative of racial progress in Black communities, and I think many other communities of color, which is a narrative that measures progress by kind of how far up you make it on a totem pole that is constructed within a capitalist model. I think we're often raised on, and I'll speak for myself, I was raised on a notion of the American dream that if you just get yourself a really good education and you work hard, then the sky is the limit, but you got to do that. And our work is to ensure that more people have a really good education so that they then can get that good job and get that house and get that car and make their way up the ladder. But as we've seen in recent decades, is that global capitalism leaves entire communities behind. Global capitalism depends on surplus labor. In a global capitalist society, not everybody gets to work. And if we want an egalitarian, multiracial, multi-ethnic society in which everyone has the right to work and earn a fair wage and equality of education and universal health care, these are not pipe dreams. It is difficult to see how we can get that in a global capitalist economy where at the slightest temptation, a corporation can pack up, move overseas, find a new plantation, new labor to exploit, and leave entire communities behind. And so I think, especially today, as technological innovation is rendering thousands of jobs irrelevant, redundant, unnecessary, and as we see a world in which capital can flow freely across borders, corporations can move overnight at the drop of a hat. Money can cross borders, but people can't. But people can't. We have to begin to ask ourselves serious questions about whether it's really possible to have an egalitarian, multiracial, multi-ethnic capitalist democracy. And, I have come to the view that I think is one that Dr. King shared at the end of his life, and that many freedom fighters have come to, W.E. Du Bois, many, I could list them, that something like a democratic socialist model, where every human being has a basic guarantee of a quality education, quality housing, the right to work at a fair wage, universal health care, that these are basic human rights, human needs that every human being should be entitled to. That doesn't mean the end of all business or all entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean that. But it means that as a starting point, we have got to be willing to honor people's basic human rights and insist upon an economy that will ensure that every voice and every life truly matters. And if you look at some other nations, I'm not going to point to any and say they've got it all right, but they're much further down the road than we are. There are countries that are considered socialist, at least according to Hillary Clinton and Trump, that actually provide quality education to every resident, that provide free health care, free college education, that have very few people behind bars, that have universal health care for every citizen. There are nations like this, and Norway comes to an example, as comes to mind. There are others. Now, these tend to be very homogeneous countries. And, what the research shows is that the most punitive nations in the world are the most diverse. And that the nations that have the most generous social welfare programs are the most homogeneous. And so there is this punitive impulse to those we conceive as others, to deny them the benefits that we want to control for us, and to have a punitive impulse towards the others. And so really the American experiment poses the question of whether we here on this land that was stolen, in this nation that was born of slavery and genocide, whether we can here build a multiracial, multi-ethnic, egalitarian democracy. And that will require, I believe, a radical revolution of values, where we open our hearts and our minds to those we have been taught to believe are others, beyond our care of concern.
The author of The New Jim Crow. I'm going to read that book, and we can go over it together. If you've read The New Jim Crow, let me know. But that's going to be one of my books on the list. This was a quick vid, but let me know in the comments how you feeling, how'd you feel about this vid. Make sure you like this video, comment, or share. One of the above. Do one of the above. We not stopping. What's the goal of yours you want to accomplish before the end of this year? I'm daily dropping, non-stopping. And so far, I've been feeling good. I'm not even gonna lie. So I hope that's the same for you. And I hope this gave you some more insight that the fight is never over and that there is hope. There's hope in the now. There's hope in the future. There was hope in the past. So I just feel like this was a good video to kind of like boost us back up, boost us up a little bit. Even if you already did, it gave you an extra boost.